Good evening and welcome to Our History Now, Worcester's pandemic year. The goal of tonight's program is to help you understand how you can participate and contribute to COVID-19 Chronicles, Worcester's community archive. Why is it important to participate in the preservation of these stories even as Worcester opens up, or at least we hope it opens up? In thinking about how we together preserve history, you might ask yourself, what is the one thing that I want to tell future generations about this part of history, the part that we're living through right now, on how it has impacted each one of us? The global pandemic is, in fact, changing all of us and our community in remarkable ways. How do we interact with the world? How do we interact with one another? Tonight, our program panel encourages you to share your personal reflections on how the pandemic changed you, each other, and our community. What has the pandemic revealed about our collective home, Worcester, is the goal. So tonight we have with us a panel of experts and to provide us with some thinking about those subject areas. And tonight's program is brought to you in part by a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities, Exploring the Human Endeavor. The Worcester Together Fund, a joint effort between the Greater Worcester Community Foundation and the United Way of Central Massachusetts, thank you, Tim, in partner with the City of Worcester. The Fred Harris Daniels Foundation, and of course, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, so important to the vibrancy of the Commonwealth, and with our thanks to the legislature and of course our very own Harley Chandler. This evening's program is brought to you not only by Worcester Historical Museum, but more importantly by our collaboration with Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI. And I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for this evening's discussion, WPI Digital Humanities Professor, Joe Cullen. Thanks, Joe.
Joe, you're muted.
Tonight, thank you. I've done that all year. Tonight, we will hear from a few of our neighbors who made history during COVID-19. But really, we all made history over the last 18 months, and we will continue to do so with our choices ahead. And that's what we want to emphasize. For the idea behind Worcester Historical Museum's Rapid Response COVID-19 Digital Archive is not only that we're living in historic times, but we're all participating and all of our stories matter, whether our choices are small or large. And thus far, over 100 Worcester residents have shared images and oral histories, videos, and reflections on how the pandemic has changed their lives and altered the contours of our city and the way we experience it. WPI students have started to curate these artifacts into digital exhibits, and they range from the poignant, from images of parents, children visiting their elderly parents at nursing homes and communicating through glass sliding doors, to the quirky of the T-Rex, the large T-Rex dinosaur that sits on Ararat Street, and for most of the pandemic has been wearing a mask and carrying a Black Lives Matter sign. These contributions really will have an impact on the way in which Worcester thinks about the pandemic in the future. And they give us a record that will be used to create the fullest and honest and most dynamic history of the city. For as different as we are, and as sometimes divided as we are also a community. And that's why we ask everyone to participate in this. Because over the past year, we have started to debate and discuss what parts of our history matter. And just as we need to focus on new pieces of our past, we need new ways to tell our stories, and museums need new ways to collect those stories. And the COVID-19 Chronicles, Worcester's Community Digital Archive, is one of those tools. So tonight, we'll hear from 5 individuals who not only made history over the past year, but also helped Worcester Historical Museum preserve it. First, we'll hear from local documentary photographer Matt Wright, And then we'll hear from Dr. Maddie Castile, Commissioner of Health and Human Services for the City of Worcester. Next, we'll hear from Nydia Colon, who is the Director of Creator Leadership and Organizational Innovation at the Worcester Youth Center, and she'll be joined by many of the dynamic and exciting youth she works with. We'll follow up with Tim Garvin from the United Way and Worcester Together that has been doing so much for our community. And then the person really behind the digital archive, Allison Steves, who was a WPI student just up until May, but is continuing on to help the museum capture all of these stories. We asked each of the participants to ask how the pandemic changed them and the city. And this is the same question we ask of you in the coming days and months ahead, to think about how you might want to join this conversation by logging on to worcestercovid19.org and sharing your pandemic story, and to think about how you will share your past, not only with those in your immediate circle and family, but for the rest of the community who deserves to hear your particular story as well as their own. In terms of this program, it will not be a live question and answer session at the end. We encourage you to enter your questions in the chat box as you think of them, and I will queue them up for our speakers towards the end of our program. Our topic is interesting, our speakers are more interesting and exciting, and so really we could go over an hour, but we are limited to an hour. So when we end, please remember that you can continue this conversation at worcestercovid19.org, our community archive. With that, I'd like to first introduce Matt Wright, who will speak with us and share many of the images that he has taken over the past year.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone for joining us. So just like a lot of other creatives and photographers, when COVID happened, I kind of lost a lot of my income overnight. I was not alone with other people that were in the same boat. So I kind of had to think differently of how I was going to get by. So I'm going to share with you, I guess, basically it's my photographic journey through COVID-19. I know that's not over yet, but we're going to start at the beginning. I'm going to try to multitask with flipping through images, as well as talking about them as they come up. So if I was just struck at how empty the city was when it first started happening. Much of my job relies me going to clients' locations to create work, to help them promote their mission. That was just all dried up. So I kind of fell back to my contact, to people that were friends of mine, people that I met through restaurants, other local musicians who put together a live stream, local brewery who started doing curbside service and sanitizing. They're just doing different things to kind of adapt their business. And it was just something. Going through all my images yesterday to put together the slideshow for today, it gave me hope, because it started out, it was just this huge, it was like a huge weight on us. We didn't really know what was going to happen. So I kind of said, what can I do? What can I do to document this history? So once the pandemic started advancing, we were in the second month, and things were definitely getting serious. So I kind of started gravitating towards people that I know who were still working, and most of them were healthcare professionals. I said, what can I do to kind of highlight these folks. My brother and my mother they're both ICU nurses. They were going to work every day. I had very close friends who are still out there, still basically they were going to battle. They were facing the unknown. So I started connections. I had friends of and I just had strangers that I hadn't met before who wanted to share their stories with me. So that was kind of, I kind of transitioned into the healthcare portrait project, where I was just going out to meet people at their locations, nurses who were working at the field hospital. After a while, I reached out to UMass. I'd done some work with them photographically a few years ago, and I used to work on the patient care side at UMass, CMT. So I went kind of see what everyone was going through. So it just worked out that UMass was willing to give me the access to document what their caregivers were going through and to document, because we haven't seen anything like this in over 100 years. I just want to make sure we were getting documenting what was happening. So there was, everyone I talked to was extremely supportive. There was, yeah, I mean, going through all these photos, it's just, I can't believe that I was there. I can't believe this was all happening. Everyone they so positive throughout all of this. And just meeting like the different doctors, nurses, EBS workers, food service folks. These are photos of the field hospital. They were winding down their operations. Even the local colleges stepped up to really help the community. I know it kind of rocked everyone's life. And Worcester State, they kind of reached out to me I do a lot of work with them, but that was gone. We had to basically scrap the 20 class graduation. So a little mass drive, the graduating to campus one last time just to show their appreciation. And also different to different partners in the community to hand out t-shirts, show appreciation. City Hall here. Then we're dealing with the pandemic, and then George Floyd's murder started happening, and that just kind of changed the tone there. Let's see. So, I mean, this is something that's extremely important to support Black lives and to say no to racism in the face of the pandemic. I mean, it's something you just fight for. And we saw police activity increasing. We saw people taking them or making them more accountable for things that they were doing. There's more eyes on anything. I feel like if anything, with the pandemic, we put a microscope. We put a lot of different things under microscopes, and we definitely gave attention to the right things. Here we have some Bartlett High School graduation. They put all the kids on buses and drove them around the town, kind of like when they had the teacher parades. It's kind of sad to see. I remember my school graduation being with all my friends, but different times. I mean, even pouring rain, getting their messages out. Staff members at EMK reached out to me. They had a standout and in support of Black Lives Matter. We have a mural project downtown in front of St. Vincent Hospital, DCU Center, on MLK Boulevard. High school graduations look different. We saw the Bartlett High, but this high. So right before the pandemic, working with the city's cultural office, Amanda Gregoire, one of the former employees, had come up with this idea to photograph and capture stories of residents of Worcester. So here we have a collection of photos that we took during the pandemic. We were exercising social distancing. We used Elm Park and the Common outside to set up a portable studio. So that was a little different for me. Here's a shot of background with in front of it. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who've seen the work, who have even participated in the project. It was hugely successful, in my opinion, but it was just great just to see all these people out here. And in the face of the pandemic, I feel like I connected with so many more people than I would have in the normal times. It was a very strange thing. Here we have is,
Excuse me, Matt.
It was this year. I decided, yep.
I'm going to need to ask you to bring us to an end point.
Sure. So then we have the vaccines coming up a little bit. The mass vaccine clinics. There's just a lot that happened during this year. It's really hard to bring it all into this amount of time, but yeah, I mean, it shows that there's really good things that can happen in the face of seems like the most horrible thing in the world. People, we're resilient, and there's so many folks out there who just want to help other people. That's my major takeaway. I mean, there's just so many people came together, and we're still here. We did our thing.
And you did beautifully, Matt. Thank you for all the work you've done documenting this. This is just a gorgeous set of photographs that will be really priceless. And now I'd like to move on and ask Dr. Maddie Castile to share some of her thoughts. We saw some of the vaccine clinics that she was running and Matt photographs. So Dr. Castile?
So thank you. So I have to say that the pandemic was probably the biggest event of my lifetime. And I think initially we were just thinking that it was happening elsewhere and wasn't happening here. And I think about the day on March 10th, when the city manager asked to meet with us to talk about, are we going to have the St. Patrick's Parade or not? What are we going to do? You think this is happening here? We had no cases in Worcester. And we decided that day that we would cancel the St. Patrick's Parade. And everybody was upset that we ended up canceling the parade. And I think about, a couple of days later, we had our first, on March 14th, we had our first case, and it was related to the Biogen outbreak. And then as the days went on, we had the second case, the third case. And by March 20th, we knew that this was something that was going to be bigger than us. By March 18th, actually, we closed City Hall to the public because we had our fourth positive case. And March 20th is when we decided that we needed to take care of the most vulnerable in our communities. And so our whole Health and Human Service department was really looking at how we do that. And we ended up opening 4 shelters: St. John's, North High School, Ascension Church, and then we had Worcester Tech was our positive COVID shelter in case we found anybody who was homeless during that time who ended up being positive. And I have to tell you, we separated people and put them into these different buildings. There were about 25 to 30 people in the building, and we took care of them. Initially we ended up hiring some people to help through that process, but we were the people who came in every day, made sure the supplies were there, made sure that people were doing okay, try to figure out how we brought medical care there. And I think those initial days when we did the shelter, I think about how I felt, and I think about the stress, the anxiety that we had, because we didn't know what this disease was all about. We didn't know if it was on your clothes, it was on your shoes, where was it? Do we wear a mask? Do we don't wear a mask? We wore a mask during that whole process, but there was still a controversy around that time, whether you do or you don't. But it was, we just didn't know. And then we started testing a little bit later, we were able to get UMass and their EMS to come and test people. And we found out that 39% of the people who were homeless actually were positive for COVID. We were then able to really think about, and they were all asymptomatic people. So it wasn't that anybody showed any symptoms, it was that they were just positive and able to transmit it from one to the other. That scared the living daylights out of us. And we were there. We did the testing. We were there the entire time. I thought about, that I'm getting old and that I have medical issues and my husband has medical issues and he's in the medical field. And we're both in and out with COVID positive patients, and we didn't know what was going to happen. But I think the biggest thing out of all of that is that our department really, our group of people, and there was probably about 7 of us who did the work from different aspects of our group, from people who did housing, people who did just different aspects of health, but not that anybody ever thought about being in a shelter or working with COVID positive people. But what people thought and what we all thought, it didn't matter at this point. We were there to really help our community and truly to help our most vulnerable in our community. So in spite of all the anxiety, sleepless nights, thinking about what could happen, we persevered, we went on. We were able to house 40 people from that shelter, and we were able to bring incredible medical care into that shelter. We then started to think about vaccines and what was happening and how do we tell the community about vaccines. And we had over 20 to 30 town halls that we gave to the community to be able to, all the different agencies from Black Families Together, Center for Living, and Working Catholic Charities, Fallon, Unity Radio. We did town halls to be able to explain to everybody what the vaccine was all about. And that was incredible. And we felt good about it. We felt that we were helping the community. We then started to hear during this time what the data was showing. We worked with UMass. We started the COVID-19 Equity Task Force. It was something that the city manager and Eric Dixon from UMass, the CEO of UMass, thought together that this was something that we should do. We brought community to talk about this and to be a part of this process and to hear their voices of what they thought was happening in the community. And that was, to me, and along with Worcester Together, this was groups of people getting together to figure out how we solve this issue, which was, to me, one of the most things during this pandemic that we need to replicate, and we need to continue to work together to hear people's voices about what they feel about what's going on in our community. So this task force brought the data, showed us that who was being affected the most, and what we needed to think about, how to outreach, how to start giving vaccinations to them. And truly that the Black and the Latino community were really the ones suffering the most. They were the frontline workers. They were the people who lived in multi-generational housing, and they were the ones who were being affected the most. So how are we going out into the community to make sure that they had access to testing, that they had access to vaccinations? And so that was a lot of what we did. And I have to tell you again that all of this time, besides the anxiety, besides being stressed about it, besides worrying about your own health, again, it was probably the best thing I've ever done in my lifetime. And I will cry about that, because it was to be right there with people and to be able to talk to people and get them to understand about the disease and get them to get vaccinations was really, I don't know, it was just an incredible piece, and to work together with the others was amazing. And then to think about that during this time, we had the most incredible reckoning of racial justice. I mean, never in my lifetime have we been able to talk about racism the way we've been talking about racism, to talk about the inequities that exist in healthcare. And we've known that these inequities exist for a long time, and that we haven't done anything about it. But now we can sit and hopefully talk about it. And then our goal was that it should never go away. It's not going to just decide that we're done with this and we can move on and go back to our lives. No, this changed our lives. This changed how we think. And we have to continue that process. So just to end it, I'm going to tell you that we've been vaccinating since January. We've gone to all the shelters, Worcester Housing. We really have gone into the community. Worcester has been one of the 20 cities in Massachusetts that have seen the numbers of our Black and brown communities have higher rates of COVID. And so the idea was when they brought up the equity vaccine, those are the vaccines that we've been giving into the community to make sure that Black and brown people in our community are getting access to vaccinations. And that is what we've been doing the entire time. We have reached a wall in a sense. We're still vaccinating. We had days when there were 700 people vaccinating and we thought we would never be able to finish that. And we've come down now to 12 people being vaccinated a day. We will continue to keep vaccinating. We will continue to work through this process. And it is something that is life-changing, and that, but at the same time, we've learned so much about this that hopefully it will change how we practice medicine, how we look at public health, and how we look at our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Castile. There's just really no words for our appreciation, both of your comments and for your work for all of us, and the way you've become such a transformative figure in the city. I'm now going to ask Nydia Colon, who is the Director of Creative Leadership and Organizational Innovation at the Worcester Youth Center, to share a few thoughts and to introduce some of her dynamic partners in crime. I'm afraid I have to.
I was saying, thank you, Joseph. You can't do that to me, Maddie. You can't leave me there because I have a big knot in my throat right now. Thank you for the work that you do. And thank you, Dr. Castile came, sent her people to the Worcester Youth Center as a vaccination site on June 26th. So we were happy to have them there. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Nydia Colon, and I am with the Worcester Youth Center. And I am so honored to be here because this is an important conversation to be had. And I have some of my beautiful minds with me because I think young people have beautiful minds and their voices matter, and we need to, to sit up and listen when they speak. And, and at the center, we promote advocacy and owning their voices and sharing their thoughts. And they have done just that. These 4 young people that are with me here today have stayed engaged with the youth center throughout the pandemic and, throughout the Zoom era, right? We used to open our doors at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we quickly had to think of how do we keep our young people engaged. So we did a wellness check for our kids, and at 2 o'clock they would log in, and so many of them came back because they wanted to share their anxieties, because this, imagine, I was anxious. So imagine our 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. What do we do now? What is going to happen? So from that, and this is how we started a partnership with the Worcester Historical Museum. We came up with the concept of a time capsule. It's hope-filled, and because our kids always said the answer to their anxiety, to their knot in their stomachs was, creative endeavors, poetry, painting, singing, rapping, writing stories. And we put all of that in a collection, and we are proud to say that the Worcester Historical Museum houses that right now for us. And I encourage you to visit worcesterYouthCenter.org. We have all of our work up there for you to peruse. But we also, during this pandemic, as Dr. Castillo was saying, we were battling 3 pandemics, not only COVID-19, but we were battling racial injustice and violence pandemic. And right now we are involved in a campaign called Violence is Not Normal, because violence never should be normal. And peace, which is the opposite of violence, is all of our birthright. So now I want to introduce to you our wonderful Felicity Eke. She is a youth that has been at the center. We have watched her grow, and we're so proud of her. She is in college right now, and she's doing wonderfully. And Felicity is going to talk to us about life during the pandemic. Felicity.
Hello, everybody. Life in pandemic was kind of hard for me. I enjoy school. I know most kids don't say that. So it was kind of hard and a big shift for me to be able to do my homework on the computer. I feel like the computer is not something that you should use to, learn education. So mostly that helped me through that was my family, my friends. I felt that a sudden shift in like my attitude. I didn't really have any more depression about if I'm making it or not, if I'm by myself. So I felt like my mother, most of all, like we became best friends through the pandemic because we were obviously in the house together. We had nowhere else to go. So we were like, talking, getting to know each other more on a spiritual level. So I felt that the pandemic it wasn't a good thing, but it wasn't a good thing, but it was a good thing for us to learn ourselves and learn our family among it. I feel like I've learned, and I want people to understand that materialistic stuff don't love you. I feel like before the pandemic, everyone was always about what is the next big thing? When is the next Jordan coming out? When is the next Gucci belt coming out? I felt like that didn't, now we notice that we need that money for our family. We need that money for us going to school. We need the money for us just making it in life. So I was more taken back by how I saw my family personally and my friends take a shift and not really, wanting to go out, not really wanting to explore, just wanting to keep each other safe. I kind of became more of a person that wants to experience stuff with self-love. I felt like self-love was a very big thing that people need to understand. They need to experience it more. I feel like with the violence, as Lydia just said, because we don't have enough experience in self-love, people turn to violence. Especially they don't know how to communicate what they want. So with the next best thing that they think of is their hands. So I feel like if you don't know self-love, or you don't know yourself, or the limitations, or that you can limit yourself to when it comes to bad things, and the limitations that you can push yourself through when it comes to good things, I feel like we need to instill that in our, the younger children's lives, and especially our lives as well. We grow still, even when you're 50 or 60, even 120, you still need to understand that self-love is a very big thing.
Thank you, Felicity. That is so wonderful to hear from a young person such as you. Felicity has a lot to say, so don't get her started. Okay, don't get her started. But Felicity, I'm going to put a pin on that.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you, baby. And I'm going to introduce Kofi Brifo so he can quickly tell us about his experience as well.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kofi Brifo. I go to University Park. I'm going into 10th grade, and I think that COVID affected everybody, like either a good way or bad way. Like if you were a business owner, like you selling things probably went down. But I think COVID also had like its pros and cons. Like as someone who like is always out and about and is always like socializing. During COVID, you probably had to like regroup and like find yourself, and like some causes that like people also losing their lives. Yeah, and I think that um like when it comes to the school aspect, like it was hard because I usually like had trouble like using laptops and like the internet and stuff like that. So like me like having to do everything on the internet became like harder. But like through like the help of my friends and stuff, it became better. And like being inside all the time and like having to talk to your friends, like you had to like learn how to like re-socialize. Like if you've been inside just like talking to like your your family, and the way you talk to your family is different from the way you talk to your friends, your coworkers, your bosses, and all that. So like when you stay inside for a long time and you go out, you gotta like re-socialize. Like it's like your first time going out. So like you're gonna learn how to like re-socialize.
Yes, that is such a reality, Kofi. Thank you for sharing. I would like to quickly invite Lady to share her thoughts, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Miss Lady.
Hello. So I want to talk about, sorry. I want to talk about how life was for other people and for me during COVID, because I know like COVID was really harsh on families around the world, meaning people like what they like changed, what they disliked, and stuff they see, like their interest basically really changed because COVID like kept us inside, and it made us like find deeper like deeper deeper like stuff that we never knew we would be interested in. So it really changed me. It really changed me, like how like it changed my likes and my dislikes, um negatively and positively. It changed how I see other people. It brought me like it made me see something I never knew I had it in me. So it's like, oh, I'm just trying to prove out there that COVID really like changed people negative and positively, especially family out there. And it made families, really like I don't know how to explain it, but like it made families like
A little bit more
hard and
united.
yeah, like it made them, but sometimes like it kept them, you know how they kept they were in the house, it kept them really hard to like, it just brought them, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah. So
Uh,
COVID really changed people like a
okay.
lot.
All right. Thank you for sharing that, Lady. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Abby to talk to us about about her thoughts. Abby has a unique take on this issue.
Oh, hi guys, my name is Abigail, and today I wrote some things down so I wouldn't forget about my views on COVID and how it changed me as a person. COVID has impacted people of color, specifically the Black and Asian community. As a Black civilian in America, I never really knew about police brutality or really got into it until lockdown happened, and I was paying more attention to the news, and there would be new cases that would show up every day that would put a huge fear in my heart. Say their names: Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Oscar Grant, Sandra Bland, and the list goes on, which is terrifying itself. I pray for justice for all victims of police brutality. COVID has also affected the Asian community horribly. During this time, Asian people were getting mocked, beaten, and attacked on social media and in public. It was so bad to the point where the racist president we had called it, and I quote, the Chinese virus. It really gave a go on hating Asians publicly and blaming them on something that the US could have prevented. I stand for all people of color, and I hope justice gets served for all of them. Hashtag stop Asian hate. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag violence is not normal.
I love you, Abby. Thank you for that. Maddie, I'm in the same boat as you are right now. Thank you, my wonderful, beautiful minds. You inspire me every day. I learn so much from you. So thank you.
Thank you so much for those invaluable contributions. Everything you've given us at the museum will be so valued through the archive, and those words in particular from all of you. I'm now going to ask Tim Garvin to share his reflections, having been so much at the center of this, both in his role at United Way and with Worcester Together.
I believe we're going to start with a video. And so maybe you're like me and you can't hear the sound. So I will try and narrate.
I got you. Wait, sorry. I'm going to start it over.
So we still don't have sound.
You have to make sure that you share computer sound before you share the video.
Yes, no?
You're gonna have to take the video out and then share it again.
That's okay. Let's just, I'll start in. So what you're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, you were seeing a video that we made, and you may remember that when Dr. Steele started, she talked about March 10th of 2020 being that date that we started thinking this thing that was in the West Coast was coming east. For us at the United Way, Friday morning, March 13th, we announced the beginning of a fund. And if somebody had asked me how much did we expect to raise so that we could respond to the coronavirus, I would have said if we can raise $50,000, that would be absolutely tremendous. On the weekend, which was March 14th and 15th, Councilor Sarai Rivera started calling a bunch of people that had worked together, nonprofits, businesses, elected officials, when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, and we had worked together to coordinate services. We had that meeting, the first meeting of that group, on Monday morning, March 16th, and it was at the Boys and Girls Club. And the video that we saw a snippet of, it was a 38-second video that we made after our first meeting of what became known as Worcester Together. Worcester Together certainly became a fund, the Worcester Together Fund, and yes, we laugh a little bit because we did not think of the acronym. It is acronymed as WTF, and some of you know that as a different acronym. The Worcester Together was also a response team because we responded. We started with 26 people, and some of you have heard that organizational development term. You form, you storm, you norm, and then you perform. And though we didn't believe we were doing that, that's exactly what happened over these last 71 weeks. We have met every week. We now have more than 350 people, organizations, businesses, nonprofits, elected officials. Our congressman has joined us numerous times. You saw Congressman McGovern on the video. Senator Ed Markey has joined us numerous times. Mayor Joe Petty opens every meeting that we have. And then we listen to the health statistics that are usually one day old, and they're given by this amazing woman that mostly no one knows about. Her name is Jean Shershak, and she has the greatest data that allows us to make every decision we make based on data and scientific evidence, and so that we can pinpoint what are the issues and where are the issues. We cascaded down from this large group, and we started making subcommittees. They focused on health, behavioral health, food, housing and shelter, education, youth development, culture, clergy, seniors, economic development, employment. And then they cascaded even below that into logistics. How do we get hot meals to people who are quarantined? We've delivered more than 200,000 meals to people who are quarantined, and we've invested more than $300,000 into the restaurant community. We then had I'm so thrilled that the Worcester Youth Center has a number of our youth, our shining lights on this presentation. We had a problem when our schools went remote. We figured out and we learned that about 1 out of every 5 children, students, teens in Worcester did not have access. And so we worked really hard, and we were able to raise $500,000, $500,000, and buy 5,000 hotspots so that every child in Worcester could go to school remotely. And what we learned, there was a really great thing that happened. Not the remote learning, that was difficult. but that we learned also that families used those hotspots so that they could connect job training. Families used those hotspots so they could apply for benefits. Families used those hotspots so they could get their health or their telehealth. And we found that we were still connected. And as long as we cared about each other, we could make a difference. I think back to those first weeks. Dr. Castile talks about the 4 emergency shelters. We funded showers. And that was a really big deal because in order to get a certificate of occupancy, you needed to have showers. One of the first big donations we got, we put the word out to all of our colleges and universities, and we got a warehouse of toilet paper donated to us. None of us probably remember that it was about 60 weeks ago, you couldn't get toilet paper in stores. And I was thrilled. Yes, I'm saying that. I was thrilled that we got a warehouse of toilet paper donated to us. We didn't have masks in that first video because we didn't have masks. And then there was a run on personal protective equipment. And then the government created the payroll protection program, and that helped so many businesses. We had never heard of the word Zoom 71 weeks before. And yet here we are on a Zoom, and we live on this. And then the summer came, and we created a great summer. The Worcester Together Fund was this beautiful collaboration between the United Way and the Greater Worcester Community Foundation and the City of Worcester. In a short 10 months, we ended up raising more than $11 million. And we worked to get those dollars out into the community within 72 hours. Joseph, if you were to ask, what lessons did we learn? Rapid response, thoughtful, strategic, be authentic, and get to know the community so that you can be engaged with and for and from the community to make a difference. I have taken to misquoting Charles Dickens and the first line of A Tale of Two Cities. And the first line was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And my misquote is the last 71 weeks have been the worst of times, and they've also been the best of times. Worcester Together is a collaboration. It's a collection of people who came together not because of funding, not because of a grant, but because of service and because of care for their neighbors and their community. 300 people working together. I am so impressed. Dr. Castile said it, and I will change the words. It is the greatest work of my life that we have been involved in these last 71 weeks. The greatest lesson is not to let it go away as we come out of, and we pray we're coming out of this pandemic. I share what everybody has said. We are concerned. There seems to be a third surge. The Delta variant is very scary to us. I am thrilled to work with Dr. Castile and the Department of Health and Human Services so that we've gotten the vaccine into the neighborhoods and into the community. And when anybody has any resistance, my reaction and my response is, that's fine, no judgment, but talk to a doctor. Talk to a doctor. Call Dr. Castile. Call Dr. Hirsch. Go to St. Vincent. Go to Edward M. Kennedy. Go to Family Health. Go to UMass Medical. Ask a doctor, do you need the vaccine? And my hope is they are going to say yes, and that will be enough so that we go from 60% to 70% to 80% to 90%, and so that anyone and everyone can have access. Our work is not done. We need to stay together. I don't have any, I have one. We had a few t-shirts made, and I think this speaks to it all. That's who we are. If I were to sum up the last 71 weeks, this is the Worcester Miracle, because we have come together as a community, and we have to stay together as a community to help everyone. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for that really wonderful reflection and inspiring leadership. There's not been a day I haven't looked to the news and saw your leadership displayed in so many fabulous ways. And now David is going to share that video.
For the people in this community, and we're, yeah. You're on. Yeah, I'm Congressman Jim McGovern. I'm here with Councilor Soraya Rivera and a whole bunch of providers in this city who do a lot of good work for the people in this community. And we're here to make sure that in our response to this coronavirus crisis that nobody gets left behind. that everybody's needs are met, and
Yes.
whether it's from education to small business to housing, you name it, we're going to come together and make sure we deal with this. And I feel really confident after this meeting that we got a plan and that people are working together, and so people should feel assured that we're all coming together and we're going to get through this.
Thank you, David. And let's make sure that gets into our archive as well. And to talk about our digital archive and how to access and use it, really one of the driving forces behind it is with us tonight. And this is Allison Steves, a recent 2021 graduate of WPI, who has really taken over the role of stewarding this resource over the last several months. So Allison?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So yeah, no, I really got started with the COVID-19 Chronicles as part of my senior capstone project for my degrees in writing and interactive media. I have, for the past year or so now, I've contributed to the archive as a website designer, a social media manager, and a digital exhibit creator. And so today I just want to talk a little bit about what participating in the COVID Chronicles digital archive is like, and some of the storytelling that actually comes with that. So to start, we've heard a lot of great stories today from our guest speakers, and stories like these and the individual stories that you have too are really the driving force behind this archive. We start with individual contributions, whether that's text, videos, pictures, can even be poems and social media posts, anything that you can think of that you could upload. And so when you submit your contribution through the COVID-19 Chronicles submission page on our website, it becomes what we call an item. But more excitingly, it's now a story that's archived. And so items are really the bones of this archive. I like to think of it as kind of a glimpse into a pandemic moment of what happened on this day, who experienced these feelings, who experienced these situations, and even what these situations were that had emerged from the circumstances of COVID. And so our goal and why we want you to contribute is because we want to capture as many of these meaningful moments as we can while we can, especially as we, hopefully start to move away from the pandemic era. And so one way that we think about items is through collections. And this is really just kind of a way of grouping items that are associated together. We see two types of collections, one of which tends to be based around an individual contributor. So Matt Wright's healthcare portrait project, for example, the individual portraits would be individual items, but then they're also part of that larger healthcare portrait project collection. The other type of collection that we see tend to be thematic collections, which might have many different sources and contributors, but are all still centered around a common theme, such as food insecurity during the pandemic, for example. But even better than items becoming collections is items becoming exhibits. And, I think of exhibits as really being where this magic happens, where we take these moments, these items, we try to connect them, and in doing so, we encounter a lot of questions like what larger themes and larger stories are emerging? What collective experiences happened or are still happening in Worcester? What can we observe about these items together? What seems interesting? And especially, how can we learn from these moments, right? And so these are the kinds of questions that are going to persist for years into the future, and our answers may actually even change with a little bit of critical distance that the passing of time provides. And so when I think of building exhibits, I think of building stories that are profound and personal and get the reader to think, but without being prescriptive. So in writing these exhibits myself, I've learned that I don't want my experiences and my perspectives to kind of spill into the stories of these items. We want the items to be able to speak for themselves, and the exhibit structure should really just be providing that storytelling framing and scaffolding to connect these individual stories into something bigger together. And so exhibits really end up being kind of this window that future historians wouldn't otherwise have. And that's really a window for more stories to be told in the future about these times. And in a way too, the exhibit itself sort of becomes a historical artifact in its own right because we are making it during these times. But kind of the amazing thing is that these bigger stories are ongoing and they don't just end when I finish an exhibit. Once an exhibit is published, we actually get more items, which of course, I like to think that that's actually inspired by the exhibit itself. Kind of that mentality of, hey, you know, I have something that I can contribute to this story, to this exhibit. And so that's to say that exhibits are kind of a way of lowering the barriers of entry to contribution by giving users ideas of what they are able to actually contribute. And so really, I consider that the big strength of this digital archive, this ongoing conversation that occurs between items and exhibits. We see that items inspire exhibits, but then exhibits also inspire items. And so how exactly can we get you to join in on this conversation? We have the submission form at worcestercovid19.org, where you'd actually be prompted to fill in different fields for your story, your item. You'd be giving it a title, a description, a date, different other fields, which would then actually show up on your story's page as kind of that associated metadata with it. On top of that, when you submit, you have the option to upload a file or even multiple files. So you can add different pictures, videos, Word documents, PDFs, any other kind of file type that are associated with your story. And when you do that, that's the way for the museum to save your media, which we can then incorporate into new exhibits and share in other ways as well. So I encourage you to check out the archive to see what's there, see what exhibits we have. We have more coming up, and to contribute your story to be a part of this larger conversation with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Allison, for all you've done over these last, I think it's almost 10 months. You've been invaluable. And now I'm going to return the program because this evening I allowed our participants to speak because what they said was so valuable. And I didn't feel that I could interrupt any one of these participants. So we have come to the end of our evening. So I'm going to ask Bill Wallace to conclude our program and bring us to a close. And finally, I want to thank all of you who participated and all of you who've joined us and all of you who will watch us on YouTube for making the contributions to the archive, because that will shape the way we remember these times and what we accomplished. Which, as this evening reminded us, is incredible. Bill?
Thank you, Joe. This is, in fact, is incredible. It's an incredible time. It's a time during which we are changed as a community, as individuals, as the world. We're changed forever. But it's also an incredible time this evening with these your collective invaluable contributions from all of our speakers. The stories are profound, they're personable, and they're just so moving. It's really important that they become part of the archive. This is, as Tim would say, Worcester together. Not quite his 300-member team, but this is all of us coming together to share those stories of life, how Worcester and we are all changed forever, and every single voice matters. So I leave you with a question. What is the one thing, or what are the many things that each one of you and your friends and your partners and your agencies would like to tell future generations about this moment in history? What we have done individually, what we've done together, what we're living through. The global pandemic has forever changed how we interact with the world, but also how, as we've heard tonight, how we view ourselves, how we view our families, how we work together as community, and how we simply look at each other. So please, join that conversation. It's our history, it's our city, it's Worcester together. And by sharing what is your experience, it becomes our experience, and Worcester is stronger for your participation. So please, join us and make your contribution, and invite all of your friends to make a contribution to the COVID-19 Chronicles. It's Worcester together. It's very important. You can always contact us at the Worcester Historical Museum for more information. You have Allison's email address from the previous slide. Take your place in Worcester history, please. We are not out of this pandemic yet. We have plenty of time to share the stories. Let's hope that the end is sooner than we might otherwise think, but let's be there. Let's be part of the story. Tonight's recording will soon be available on the museum's YouTube channel on our website page. Be sure to like us, of course, on Facebook and Instagram, and follow the posts from Allison and from the Worcester Historical Museum. And before we wish you good night, we really must thank Joe and Allison, particularly for their leadership They are the driving forces behind the COVID-19 archive. They have taught us that all stories matter. Your stories matter. My story matters. We all matter. So thank each and every one of you. Again, Joe, Allison, all of our speakers, and all of those of you who have participated this evening. Do share your story. Do share your story. It's Worcester together. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing you soon in a safer world and in a different time. In the meanwhile, good evening.